been doing is sharing this SOP with candidates that are looking to get the attention of someone that they're looking to work for, right? So we kind of go through this SOP and we can do it with you live with like one or two companies that you're trying to target and actually write the campaign with you. If you think that would be helpful. And then after that, we were thinking it would actually be interesting. And some of this might come out as we're talking just to get your point of view, because obviously you're like very well versed in marketing and branding, and have had success in your career standing out. So we'd love to just hear some of what you've been doing on your search and some maybe advice or tips that you have for other candidates that might be looking to stand out as well. And then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. So I'll relinquish screen control and Steven can run through it with you and we'll see what we get.
Yeah, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it. And the SOP looks really great. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Nice.
Sorry, I was muted. Likewise, I appreciate you actually taking the time to go through it. I realize it's kind of dense, and if you're like me and like a visual learner, but it could be really helpful with all the screenshots. But then I realized in showing people that some people's brains don't work that way, so it needs more context sometimes. But basically, I think the sort of gist here, and maybe a good place to start is, how familiar are you with like cold outbound from the perspective of how like a business development or sales development rep would prospect and do this sort of outreach?
I am not familiar. I haven't done that in my career. Yeah, I haven't done that in my career. I mean, there's been like the occasional one-off, of course, for like certain partnerships and stuff, but not like on a day-to-day basis. I've been strictly on the marketing side.
Cool, got it. Okay, but so, yeah, I mean, you're a comms person, so like this isn't totally out of left field,
right?
Well, short sort of like setup. That for further reading, I would check out Beck Holland if you don't know her. She's really, really great thought leader in the sort of cold email space. This was the webinar and deck that I got these tactics from. But what's been really helpful for my team doing this in B2B is just sort of leveraging the beauty of the self-generated content on LinkedIn and the premise that most people kind of enjoy talking about themselves, or get excited when other people reference something that they've created, contributed to. So we just take that, and that's sort of the core approach to how do we craft a message to a stranger, and then apply that same method that we would do for pitching a B2B product or service, and applying it to pitching yourself. So that's sort of the gist. I don't need to go through this in too much depth. The rest of it's really just sort of tactical, like how do you put together the template and what would it look like? So I figured we could probably spend like 10, 15 minutes if you're game, sort of going through this approach with a company or a specific role or somebody you want to apply this to in your job search.
Awesome. That sounds great. So I guess one of the things I'm looking at, one of the companies I'm looking at is, so let me back up. So I come from, and if you have thoughts on this and anything I'm missing, I will love it. But I've been spending a lot of time looking at like what tech companies would be best for me to pivot to, because I want to get into tech. And I think I'm one of the few in San Francisco who's never worked in tech. I've been primarily in real estate and hospitality, and while consulting, I've done a lot with like software and startups, but it was like one-off projects, not companies. So to get in, I'm finding that it's a challenge. So I was looking at like some of the major tech companies that seem to be more open to people who are coming from other industries. One of those is Salesforce, and the other one is LinkedIn.
And great.
And that's based on people I know who work at other like major tech companies and just kind of talking to people. As I'm looking at LinkedIn right now, I mean, it's looking like the hiring is low. So that's changed drastically in the last couple of months. But that is one I'm definitely interested in.
Let me pull up. Obviously.
Unless I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. Yeah.
Let's see. I doubt it. Yeah, like Salesforce has 2,300 job openings. That's insane. And LinkedIn says they have, what if we go to jobs? Just curious. 10. Wow.
So we're gonna sorry, I didn't have a chance to look at that before now. I've been applying for jobs one-off and not looking at companies so much, which is probably something I should be doing. So maybe we focus on Salesforce.
Yeah, for sure. I think that could be, it's also like a real kind of easy company since there's just so many people. And I'm sure we could find a good example of this. So let's jump into what's like a job title or keyword.
I would look like communications is definitely, or marketing. I did see some roles on there the other day that I was looking at, and I reached out to someone I know there, but I didn't get, or that I like an acquaintance, but I didn't get a response. And so I was like, my ears perked up at your templates and strategy because I'm thinking like, okay, well, how can I do this differently?
Perfect. Yeah. How did you reach out to your acquaintance?
Via LinkedIn.
Via LinkedIn. Okay. I assume you're looking for this role in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll pick that, and then account executive. I don't really know if that's gonna help. So I'll just maybe job function. Let's just click marketing. So I'll narrow us to 32 roles here.
So it would be. It would actually be this top one, or not that one, the second one down, the corporate.
This one right here.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. Off the bat, a couple of things that are kind of like in your favor. 5 days old and only 52 applicants. Whereas like we did one of these earlier today and the role had been up for 4 days and had like 350 or something.
Oh, wow. Okay, got it.
Statistically speaking, there's going to be about 250 applicants per corporate role, of which HR will pick 4 to 6 people on average that they will phone screen.
Okay.
And bring into interviewing. So the pure numbers of it is just not very good. So it's kind of like one of the better reasons to think of, clever ways to just make yourself rise above all that.
Yeah.
And I think the easiest way that I like to do it is going into responsibilities or requirements. Now, is there anything in particular here? Because it sounds like you might have already like looked through some of this. Is there anything about you specifically or anything that they're asking for that you think you're, I don't know, particularly awesome at, or like you read, hey, responsibility requirement, that's me. That's why I'm interested in this.
Yeah, like if you go back up to the top, it really spoke about wanting to just so the evangelization of positioning and messaging, and it sounds like they're looking to target some very specific audiences. That's like what I've done in my positions is empowerment through storytelling, and so yeah, so I think it's exactly what I've done. I just haven't done it in tech.
Virtual webinars. Okay, awesome. Can you think of any specific like content, webinar, event that you've done that you would want to tell a story about? Assuming you got like an interview, maybe.
Yeah, that's a great call. So a lot of content that I can point to. I'm putting together my own personal website right now.
Oh, great.
That will tell the story of some like other like websites, trade show materials I've created, investor decks, stuff that I can share, obviously. So I think, I can definitely tell the story.
Cool. So this is a good start. So I'm going to run over to Salesforce. They have a group. That's not what I want. I want a company. And then just to make it something that everyone will do. I've got Sales Navigator, which has like a lot of extra filters, but I don't think we need to go too crazy. Considering this is pretty straightforward, we can just do like Bay Area, and then senior manager corporate messaging. I'm just going to go into corporate messaging. Okay, so 309 people in the Bay Area that have corporate messaging, and then I wonder if it'll let me do someone more senior. Okay, like this guy, Peter's probably pretty decent. And at least we've got 2 VPs. I don't know if that's maybe a bit a bit removed from the hiring. Maybe senior manager. I'm trying to just, as I'm thinking out loud, what we really want to do is we want to be like somewhere within 2, no more than maybe like 3 degrees of separation from the hiring process. Either someone who is like directly going to be sourcing and setting up the call, or is going to be responsible for interviewing you, or would be brought into the evaluation even if they weren't interviewing, for example. So if we just use like Allie real quick, VP, corporate messaging, she's been there 7 years. Before that was senior director of product marketing, so she's done a bunch of, just kind of gone up the chain. The next thing we want to do is see if she has any like activity, which sadly she doesn't seem like she has a ton of. I'll put her on hold for a second. Maybe Peter does. The reason, great activity is great, is because that gives us something immediately to nab, which is in posts, for example. So many big corporate people just repost something that the corporate does. But let's see. How can you best engage and support employees where you can home? Surveyed, interesting. Speed marketing, 4 key takeaways. And then the last thing you posted was 4 months ago. Okay. So, maybe one thing that you could do, for example, is grab, where does he have the 4 key takeaways? And this is a 2-minute read. I would maybe, your innovation is number 1 priority, marketers' top priorities, marketers' AI, ABM is the cornerstone, new set of technologies. Okay. Off the top of your head, do any of these sound particularly like relevant or interesting to you? Like something that you would want to surface to him in an email?
I would probably have to take a deeper dive, but I see where you're going with this, and I love the strategy. Yeah, I'll have to take a deeper dive into this one. I don't know for certain.
No worries.
But I see where you're going, and I love it. Yeah, makes total sense.
I would maybe do, let's see, set of technologies. Yeah, the gist of what we would want to do is we would grab something from here. Let's just say it's account-based marketing. Let's say, all right, this quote right here. Grab that. I'll go over. Go back. Peter. And then I'm just gonna, for the sake of this, what I would do is this is what I did in the SOP. This is our tool. And what it will help me do is get the work email address for Peter.
Oh, interesting. That's cool.
And then, okay, this like Salesforce is kind of tricky. Interesting. And that's more confident with the first one. I would grab his email, and then whether you do this like very copy paste or guess or do, connections are quite a bit slower, or using like an email or something, but if this is interesting, I can give you a month free of Interseller to play around with this and apply the same process to your job search. Okay. Happy to talk more detail about that later, but I'd grab Peter, and I've got a like campaign sequence here where I have that same template in the SOP, and I would go ahead and just copy paste that quote that I have. And then one last thing, what was the exact name of the role again? It was
yeah.
Perfect. Senior manager. Save. And what this will do for me is just plug in some of that stuff, like EBM used by okay, and then got quote. Wow, that's so long. So we would probably edit this down to like oh, just copy and paste it twice. That's why.
Oh, that's why I was like, it didn't seem that long.
Yeah, right. So the gist of it is lead with something. Since he posted that article, it's probably a safe assumption that he's aware of the content, or at least like whether he's read all of it. He's probably aware that some of this will relate to corporate messaging at Salesforce. We tie back here, elevate and tie back to you. And then you're just going to basically ask a quick question related to how, in this case, they use, or if they use LinkedIn as a source for personalized content in their ABM outreach, in their personalized campaigns for their ABM approach.
Got it.
Something like that. And then let that be the ask. It's just you're basically asking for them to engage with a question, advice really, that you're asking for about the role. And all you really need to do is allude to the fact that you're interested in that specific role. And they'll walk away understanding this stranger looked at me on LinkedIn, found something that I said people should read, read it, then reached out to me with a question about it because they might want to work with or near me at Salesforce.
Love it. Okay. It makes total sense.
That is the gist of it.
Okay. So you're looking for their activity, anything that they've featured or written, and then just basically tying it in, mentioning the job you're applying for and asking a question. I can totally do that. I love that.
Yeah, perfect. I love hearing that because I think it's just like, it's not a terribly complex strategy. It's just something that I just don't think is taught at all. Frankly, it's really not taught that well anyway for B2B, like doing this to try to sell to people. But yeah, focusing on original content that they have authored. Next thing you could go to is engaging comments, because LinkedIn will also show you if they, wrote some interesting comment on some really big piece or something to that effect. Those are the easiest. And then sort of the third, barrel to dip into is if you don't have any of that, see if you can ask a question about their experience or like their journey, because you'll be able to see where they've worked, other roles that they've had, how they've gotten promoted. Just try to make it about them as much as possible.
Okay. Cool. I'm just taking notes. Yeah, that makes total sense.
And I'll make sure to send you I'll tidy up that little copy paste that we did, and I'll send you that sort of rough copy just so that if you want to work off of that, you don't have to stare at a blank page and try to recreate it so much. It'll just be a thought out template that you can iterate on.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Love it. Very cool. So now the idea is to write the first email. You can send it, and you can basically use that sort of like a template for any company that you want to reach out to, or any one in the future, even if it's not in the job search. But the other piece of this afterwards is to understand that a lot of times it's not just one message, right? This is like the first kind of introduction. You can notice like with the call to action, we're not necessarily like asking for a call or asking for an interview or asking to be considered or talking about how much we are like in love with them and the opportunity and how it's such a great fit. we can like tell the story over time with multiple emails.
Okay.
And we also can handle common answers that we might get, right? So you might get a response like, sure, go into our talent pool, or they might just answer the question and you're like, thanks. Like, you're going to want to be armed with follow-up messages as well as like canned responses and some objection handling when you're going through this. And that's like the next level that we can do together.
Okay. Okay, cool. No, I love this. One of the things I've really been thinking about is how, well, I'm sure it's like this everywhere, but I know that in Silicon Valley, I have friends like who've been used to just like getting handed jobs, and it's not like that right now. And so having to sell yourself is a very different experience than when you like think in your head one day, I'd like to find a new job, and then the next day 3 recruiters email you. It's just not like that. So this whole concept is cool. I love it. I've never had to do this before. So I'm looking forward to trying it out. I have nothing to lose.
Love it. And that's a great segue because what we'd love to hear from your point of view, because obviously a lot of what we're talking about is from a sales perspective. From a marketing perspective, like what are some of the things that you've found to work, and how can candidates stand out like using some marketing best practices?
Totally. And I think, so first of all, Stephen, thanks, because I am not a seller. So I appreciate that at all. And selling myself has actually been super uncomfortable for me because I just don't, when I started to consider myself as a brand and not, I've always identified as the brand I'm working for instead of looking at myself as the product, which sounds really silly, but I mean, it's been, almost 11 years of that. And so I've always stood behind the values, the mission, and the proposition of the brand that I'm working for. So now that I'm looking at myself, I think some of the key ways I've looked at is, just like what I'm working on with Hatham and Serena for, I'd hire is like, what is my value proposition? So for me, like for a company, it's always 3 things. What are the 3 things that I'm best at? And having that statement written out is really helpful. So for me, I won't say, that I won't make you listen to the whole thing, but for me, it's strategy, it's project management, and it's communication, writing. Messaging is like those 3 things are my things, and I'm really good at them. So being able to kind of speak to that, and I think making sure that your messaging, like scrub yourself on the internet, like what is out there about you. And so like I found photos from 2012. I was like, where is this photo from? I was like, what, some random event I went to? But knowing that's out there is good to know, making sure that all of your, like, if you're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, that all of them are updated to say where you work or don't work, and making sure they're consistent. I know that, like, for instance, my Twitter said that I was, I hadn't updated it since my previous company, like from 2 years ago. So I needed to update that, to make sure that it didn't say anything about having a job at all. And so I probably could say actively seeking. It doesn't, but it could. So thinking about consistently how you're messaging yourself across channels, making sure that you are scrubbing to find out what is out there, and being said about, or what has been said about you, imagery that's out there. This is probably an obvious one, but frankly, I'm still shocked that it is not followed. What's public on your Facebook page and your Instagram? What kind of content are you putting out there that could potentially be controversial? So this kind of stuff I really thought was a no-brainer, but I'm seeing people at my level and above where, like, I look at their profile photo on Facebook, I'm like, I would not want them representing my company. So those kinds of things, everything about you will surface at some point. So, and then the value proposition. And I think the third part that's important is having a, some sort of personal website. I think is really important, even if it's like one page scrolling. I'm working on mine right now, and it's one more helpful link to be able to include in your signature line and an email you may send a potential employer, that you might include on your LinkedIn. or anywhere else really. So yeah, and I think maybe the last part, that from a marketing perspective, I'm always thinking about partnerships. That's what I've done a lot of for the companies that I've worked for, and it works from a personal perspective too. So that means, how am I partnering to help using my skills? And then how will that help me in a job interview? And so being able to speak to, like, I don't know how you would do it from like in other industries, but I'm sure you could. Like for instance, you're helping people right now with the idea of selling themselves. So you could probably speak to that in a job interview as well. But for me, part of my own personal value statement is that I am of service to other people. So being able to speak to working with you guys and trying to help people who are trying to find jobs using the skill set that I have. And here's the case study on how it's worked. I worked with a small tech company here in San Francisco pro bono in March as all this was kicking off, as they were trying to get doctors together to help try to find a vaccine. And I wrote like emails, and I helped them set up webinars and like all that stuff. So being able to speak to like, how have I been using my skills during this is a really awesome thing to be able to speak to in interviews. And it helps you market yourself, it helps you network, and it helps you kind of position. So those are some things that I think are valuable.
That's amazing. I love it.
I love that. I think that's really smart too, with the building your own website. And that was just such a really well laid out example, right? Like, you're doing something, you can create an asset, a digital asset around it, a case study, a story, whatever, and then you can reference that entirely on your own, host it yourself, right? Do you have any? Do you have like a favorite website that you like to use, like Squarespace or WordPress or something else nobody might know about?
I have someone. So one of the other things that I've gotten creative about in my period of unemployment is doing things for trade. So I have a friend in Austin who is building my site, an intern. I'm writing hers. I'm writing an ad agency's website right now, which is so funny to me because they're an ad agency. I feel like they should write their own, but I'm writing the site. So I don't know. I think she's building it on Squarespace. But she has a design eye that I don't. And like, I get in there and I get completely overwhelmed. Yeah, there are easy templates. I basically told her, like, here's 2 websites I like. Can you make something like this? So I'll have it next week if anyone wants to see it. But yeah, on there, I'm going to say, what have I been doing during COVID-19? I've been unemployed for 2 months, 2.5 months. What have I been doing? I just haven't been sitting around applying. I've been trying to help other people, other companies, refining my own statements, like that kind of stuff. So
that's great. I love the trade.
Yeah, well, you have to use your skills too, right? Like, I have to keep my brain.
Totally.
I'm excited to be working on the like kind of a little deck for the team here this week with Alejandra and Katie, because I have to keep my brain fresh, Yep. So.
And I think a lot of people just don't think about it because we don't. Everything's so transactional, right? Everything you do is transactional. That there's lots of people, like, you have value to offer. You can trade your skills for someone else's. It doesn't need to be this daunting thing where, I don't know how to build a website, so I need to go on Fiverr and I need to find the best person. Right. And do I have $100? You know what I mean? It's just, well, who can do this, and can I do something for them that isn't monetary but still valuable? I love that.
And then I can put her website on my website, so it's perfect. Yep. You can only watch so much Community before you have to do something real.
Awesome. No, this is great.
Perfect. Yeah, if you need anything else, let me know. I don't.
One last question that I just kind of jotted down, didn't realize I didn't have answered, was when you go scrubbing your online presence, right? And you said that you found a photo from somewhere from 8-10 years ago. Yeah. Do you have a technique or a tool or something that is easy to use for that? Because I honestly wouldn't even know how to do this.
I just Google myself.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just Google myself. If you have, there are certain tools you can use. I'm trying to remember the name of the one I used at one of my previous companies. Yeah, I just Google myself, but I do it from different browsers too, which sounds kind of weird, but it can yield different results. Yeah, and I mean, I didn't find anything shocking, but it's like, it's good to know what's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go check MySpace. That would probably be the first place you go.
Oh my gosh. I wish my MySpace was alive. Oh, so funny. No MySpace.
Cool. Love it. So awesome. We're gonna get this out to the rest of the community. I think a lot of that was like golden. A lot of what you said about like building your brand and kind of just having those three things that you know you're really good at and kind of going all in. I think a lot of people, it's like another topic for another day, but there's something to be said about like doubling down on your strengths and not necessarily like just focusing so much on your weaknesses. I think a lot of people are like,
yeah,
I suck at this, so I'm gonna like self negative talk myself and almost waste a lot of time trying to get better at something when they're really just very good at something else and they can be doing it. So I really like that a lot, kind of being that self-aware.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I spent a month trying to make myself into like a product manager.
Yeah.
And realize like, I know there's a lot of roles out there, but frankly, I don't think that's me. Like, unless I'm starting from a coordinator level position and working my way up again, like I'd rather just wait and find a role that fits the skill set that I already have and love.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's taken some hard self-exploration to discover that. But yeah, it is. It's like, don't like, unless you really feel compelled to change your strategy at this point, I don't know that it's worth the time. And people can definitely disagree with me on that one. But for me, that's not my experience.
Yeah, I think it's an easy trap to get into where, I got let go in this position and I see a bunch of roles in product managers. So I'm going to sign up for this Code Academy class and I'm going to learn Python and I'm going to pick up a book on Java. And then, a month later, it's like, I can't do this. It's going to take me it'll take me so long just to get average. Why don't I just double down on what I'm already above average at?
Yeah, and like as awesome as it is that Code Academy and every other training like project manager type course is offering 75% off, it's really thinking through what works best for you. So, yeah.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. We will talk to you soon.
You guys. Okay. I appreciate your time.
Great stuff.
All right.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye now.
Okay.